All right. Well, we're going to start off here. And so welcome to the Northeast of the United States, water utilities, lesson learned. The goal is to share experiences so you don't need to go through some of the war stories that the panelists that you'll be meeting have gone through. And in this session, we're going to be talking about AMI installations, doing it, budgeting it, planning for it, and post, and billing systems, which sometimes are done at the same time. But billing systems, we put it in there because it tends to be one of the biggest nightmares that everybody deals with. Let's see, our panelist that will be introduced shortly is Drew from Middletown, Maryland. He'll be going through his experiences. Rebecca is with Weston and Sampson. So we'll have the engineer on the call that we can ask all the questions why it wasn't done the way it was supposed to and spec wise. Will is bringing IT and finance side from the town of Southbridge. And Jeff is bringing years of experience as a commissioner of public works in Rutland, Vermont, and who completed a full AMI conversion recently. And my name is Drew, and I'll be the moderator. What I'm going to be doing is I'm going to go quickly through an AMI system as a quick overview, very quickly, and then we're going to jump right into some questions, discussions, and sharing of the experiences. So, all right. So the agenda, we're going to cover AMI systems, your choices, whether you go fixed network or cellular, the pros and cons, what you gain, the benefits you're going to realize, what you think you're going to realize, matching those expectations. And then a lot of, wow, I wish I had known that can be shared with you. And then the billing system is, typically how big of a deal could it be? And we're going to touch on specifically integration capabilities with the existing system. And that will be, is it talking to the tax department, and getting that laid out up front is extremely important. And then again, lessons learned. So going into the types of AMI, most of us know the traditional fixed network, which is a closed system that the utility owns and controls and is responsible for. And the other one is the cellular, which is sometimes referred to as network as a service. And that is, contract with Verizon, AT&T, and your endpoint radios will speak directly. So here's your town. This is what you guys are going to see when you start to do a propagation study or a review. And you have, your infrastructure. We don't want to forget the guys at corporate. And then we're going to have your customers, your residential and your commercial. And if you're on an AMR system now, you have your endpoints are emitting a signal. Now, when you do the AMI conversion upgrade, you're going to need to, whether it's cellular or fixed network, you're going to be adding repeaters and collectors. And you're going to start with your first assets are the ones you own, because you don't have to pay anybody to do that. And then you're going to add in the studies, you'll see that you're going to have to add some poles or towers or add some additional locations. So a propagation study is very important that you guys will get no matter what way you're going. And that's going to be able to show what's covered. We have not seen 100% coverage. If you're at 98%, that's pretty amazing. And I'm sure we'll hear some stories on that. But when the prop study is done, all of your meters are GPSed. They're put on topographical map that can be studied. So that's the first thing that whoever's doing it for you is going to ask to do. And then the next thing is you're going to be, after this propagation study is done, it's going to show you where the collectors and repeaters need to be placed, right? And that's based on topography. And then from there, it's going to start to show the coverage. When these, when your endpoint radios have a certain amount of coverage, when you combine that with your collector and then your repeaters, and then there's a thing called HOP that they can scan frequencies and get more efficient. But that's when you're going to really see what your true coverage is. And that will help you make decisions. And as you go out to bid, different suppliers are going to be giving you different specifications and different coverage. And that's when the fun begins. So with that, I'm going to start with Rebecca. because we're going to start with the engineer. When people first approach you on, we're looking to do AMI, what are some of the first assumptions they come to you with that are right or wrong that you need to start guiding?
So, I think the most important thing to kind of start out with when you're considering moving to AMI is going over the expectations of your system. A lot of times it's improved customer service, increase your billing efficiency. And one of the big things that you should consider is the resources you have available. I think there's a misconception that when you move from a drive-by to an AMI, the folks who are going out and reading meters, they're going to be out of a job. That's not necessarily true, especially when you look at putting in a fixed network. You're going to kind of convert your meter readers from folks who are going out and gathering reads to folks who are now going to be taking care of network maintenance, making sure all your pieces are communicating and you're able to get those readings and additional informations that you really look for with an AMI system. Another big thing to consider when you're evaluating vendors is really what you're looking for. Vendors will try and sell you a lot of bells and whistles, and most of the time, if you're never going to use it, you don't necessarily need it and need to spend the time or the money on it. So we really just try to sit down and say, what are your resources? What are you looking to get? When you're debating between a fixed network or a cellular network, what's the coverage like on your cell phones in town? Is it very hilly? Is it pretty flat? Are you willing to be able to take on 20 collectors, or would you rather pay someone with a service fee to take care of it for you? So we kind of review all those kinds of things.
One question on the cellular and the fixed network. What's your feeling on, cellular seems pretty low maintenance. I one contract, I don't need to maintain it. Not as much control, obviously, and as the contracts change. But what do you think about as additional IoT devices are added? I would say I'm still catching up to what my house can or can't do. I never would have thought all the things it can do. So there seems to be a roadmap that's developing that I couldn't even plan for. And I know with the cellular, it seems easy. The fixed network, as I add those other things, I own the network. Have you seen that as an issue or people talking about that?
I haven't seen it as an issue yet, but in the case, there has been, the only issue that I've seen with cellular is, kind of older, the first systems that went out, they went out, on 3G, and now we're up to 5G. So it's really important to understand and talk it through with your vendor, what you're getting and making sure you have that guarantee of support, 10, 15 years down the road, because we don't know what the technology scene is necessarily going to look like. So yes, cellular can be, it's not necessarily set it and forget it, but you don't have to worry about collectors and repeaters. But you're kind of taking that risk of, will Verizon 5G still be the thing? And if it's not, how easy is it going to be to update my system with the times? Does the service provide updates through the air? So you just kind of have to hit a button back in the office and it will update, the radios will update themselves to be able to continue to communicate on the new and improved networks? Or, are you going to have to go out and physically replace things to be able to use your system down the road?
So thank you. Jeff, Rebecca talked about coming into the AMI, some of the things of setting expectations and the vendor issues and different things. For someone who just recently finished what was definitely not a smooth AMI conversion, what would you like to add to that?
Well, for us, we had a variety of kind of like a perfect storm of needs. And just to kind of summarize the rationale, we did the billing platform conversion as well. Everything was changed. We did everything, soup to nuts. And for example, the billing platform, the utility billing was a module in the municipal accounting software. And this is an actual quote. The vendor for the municipal accounting software when I was complaining about limitations of the utility billing. He said, you got to understand when it comes to municipal accounting, we're the best there is, but when it comes to utility billing, we really suck. And he was right. So we needed to make a change there. We had a mishmash of meters out there. About 60% of the system was AMR, but we had the other 40% was too ancient. And we were never going to be able to replace them all at the rate we were doing it. In fact, one of the meter techs was explaining to me in 2017, you realize we're going to have to start changing out the radio meters we started putting in 2003 next year. And I said, uh-huh. And he said, you realize that that means we're never going to be able to get the other 40% done. And I went, wait, what? And he was right. The math just doesn't work. So we knew we had to do something in that regard and started looking around. AMI was clearly the best option. If you're going to spend that kind of money, get it right and, get the benefits. And we had to obviously upgrade the billing software. So we did it all. And there was one other motivating factor. When I started in 2013, 55% of the water that we delivered to the distribution system was non-revenue water. We billed for less than half of the amount of water that we were providing. We squeezed that down a little bit with some leak detection and sealing up a lot of leaks, about 400,000 gallons a day. That wasn't minor, but we still had 800 to 900,000 gallons a day that were going somewhere, and we had no idea where. And it wasn't all leaks. We got most of the leaks. So we had to conclude that it was old meters that were running slow, it was theft, and it was bad data in the billing system where people were getting water but not getting bills. And we had to really wholesale upgrade everything.
That brings me, I'm going to transition over to Drew. Drew, as you're thinking of an AMI system and some of these improvements that the utility needs to make revenue-wise, different things, is AMI a solution for you, or is what have you done to piecemeal or get on that way to there?
Well, I will say that being here working for the town of Middletown for the last 28 years, I've learned a number of lessons. Being both an engineer and having an MBA, I understand the management side. And one thing I really did learn and have learned is that always plan for the future. So any system that we have been looking at, we've always looked at it with can it be implemented to AMI in the future? Always look for expansion because it's going to happen. You're going to find that you're going to need it as you go forward. And we've actually already done a propagation study. We didn't do it because we knew we were ready to go to AMI, but I wanted to have an understanding of what's necessary. So I had some clue as to what type of billing software we wanted to use, because I didn't want something that couldn't grow with the town. And that's really where it comes down to for me is, can we grow with the town? Is our billing system able to talk to our accounting systems? Is the billing system user-friendly for the girls here that take all the phone calls every day with all the questions from everybody? Can they access the information quickly? Can they provide the information quickly? We have found a number of things. We do radio read. We still do the drive-by, but we do anticipate going to AMI in the future. Knowing what your future has for you, or at least having some plan, I think helps guide you in the decisions you make today. Looking for companies that can provide that. When I started this process and we upgraded our system a long time ago, I picked a vendor that was vertically integrated. The same person we bought the meter from was the same person that did the billing software. So when I had any problem, whether it was trying to download routes into handhelds, or whether it was a meter problem, or whether it was a billing problem, I had one phone number to call. One. It was very simple. Fast forward to today, and every element of that process has been broken off and sold to other companies. So although my plan was to stay with one vendor so it was easy to answer and address questions, and I didn't get the finger pointing, which you always get, whenever you have a billing system with multiple clients, no, it's the software people. No, it's the auto read people. No, it's this people. No, it's this. And you're trying to solve it, but you're not the expert in any of it. It becomes very difficult. That wasn't my choice, but that's what I'm dealing with today. So, keep in mind, best laid plans, just be prepared for the backup. I have backups for everything, and I have backups for the backups.
Yeah.
That's what I do.
I was just gonna say, I'm a sailor, so it's called the ditch bag. You don't want to use the ditch bag, but when it happens, it happens. And what you're talking about of all the elements of the different product getting bought out, this is a little bit of a teaser, but Jeff's provider that was doing it evaporated in the midst of his installation. So he kind of got, it's out of it. Will, I want to bring you into this. Now, Will's on the finance side. So Jeff's seeing this water loss. He comes to the town hall, does his pitch, we're losing all this money. And Drew's talking about how we're laying plans, and it seems to me like the bottleneck is going to be your department, because they're going to say, we need this much money and justify it. What do you see as, you got the purse strings, you have to answer those people, you've got this justifiable ROI. Is the ROI not presented well? Is that going to stop it? Or how are you going to guide that for advice to the people that are trying to come up with $1 million, $2 million budget that I think we all believe is beneficial? So could you give us some insight there?
So I would say I am completing my third integrated municipal finance software conversion. The last module that we were doing is the utility side, and we're scheduled to go live on March 31st is closing out our previous software supplier and going live with a new one the following week. This is my third one. And I would say upfront, advocate for the complete budget and all the resources you need. The first one, time numbs all and heals all pains, but I can tell you this one here. So I'm actually the tax assessor, the IT manager, and we also do all the water and sewer billing for our community. And so in this latest conversion, we converted all of our software, completely integrated package. And the first side, and it took about 2 years, the first part of the conversion was the accounting side, and that took 6 to 9 months. And that got a lot of, because as you say, the purse strings, that is the focus on the purse strings. So they tend to get the resources they need a little bit easier. And then the second side was our payroll, ultimately just as important. That completed prior to January 1 of last year. And then we worked on our tax side, which is also me, and we got that completed. And then we finally got to utility. And I'm looking at conversion days and the resources that were allotted. And it's like, wow, my goodness, where did it all go? It was all used on the previous. So I had to fight for additional funding, additional change orders to get some of the resources I needed for the utility conversion. In addition, it's kind of interesting. I got a spreadsheet together of all of the resources and man hours, because we had a number of man hours that were allocated to the whole project. And I looked at it, it's like, okay, 300, not man hours, man days. 300, for example, allocated to the financial side, another 300 allocated for the payroll, another 300 allocated for the tax side. And we had like 150 left for utility. And at the very beginning of this, all the conversion people on the company that we were going with told us the utility was far and away the most complex, because it touches all sides, both on the collection side and the billing side. So that's one thing I would really advocate. Make sure you have your resources defined up front. So you're not, I used the term earlier, so you're not the caboose trailing it and saying, oh yeah, well, that'll get done. So there's that. As far as the dollars, as you say, you go through all of your leak checking over the years, and we've gotten better and better and better at that. A previous software company didn't give me quite all of the reporting that I needed, but I could get the info. But in the conversion, you find all of those ugly warts, all of the things you would swear weren't there. Nobody that I've found who wasn't getting billed, but you find meters that that were set up that might not have the correct zero conversion or multipliers, and it's like, oh my goodness, this place has been being undercharged by a factor of 10, and you find those things, and it brings money to the bottom line, and it brings equity and fairness. But you know, those are some of the things you'll find, and it is an ROI. You don't know what you don't know until you've done it.
You know, I'm gonna jump in on that. This is something we see consistently as we're working with the utilities on different aspects. We see anywhere between 3 and 12% errors in the billing, whether it be the truncation, how the meter was loaded. We do this analysis, and 99.9% of the time it's money for the town. I mean, a worn out meter, that's one thing, you know, you're losing it, but the billing errors and the connections are very key. So, and with that, I'm going to say, as the billing systems are talking together and everything, it's garbage in, garbage out. So that I would recommend anybody who's doing, whether it be a billing conversion or an AMI conversion complete, like Jeff, you did it all at once, is really start with what are we going to start putting in this funnel of information.
I just wanted to tag on with what Will had said. One thing that I found that works really very well, he talked about resources, funding. So you're always dealing with either elected officials or an owner of the property. Show them the benefits of the new system so that they get it and they don't feel bad about making the allocation of those resources. I send a report to my elected officials after every billing cycle that lists every account in the town, how much water they used, how much history. It puts a graph on the front of it. You know what? All of a sudden, the thing that they just approved hundreds of thousands of dollars for, they're seeing the benefits coming back to them. That way, when something comes up and I've got to go back and get some more money to upgrade something, benefit of it. One of the negative things that happens very frequently in local governments is we get these allocations, we put these systems in, but the board never sees the benefit of it. So to them, it's just a big ticket item and they don't know why they have to keep funding it. So always make sure to take some element of the billing system that you're working on and show it back to those that approve the funding and make sure that they're getting some buy-in on it, that they're getting some use of it. And I think that that makes a big difference too. That's why I've never had a lot of difficulty in getting funding in our billing systems, because they see benefits of it and we actually use it on a regular basis. So they got their fingers in it and it's useful to them. I mean, I just think that that's very important, because one of the biggest things that, and Will touched on it, funding. And it's, you know, you have to maintain the systems. There's maintenance cost, there's upgrades. I mean, every 3 or 4 years, you're going to have an upgrade. It's going to cost a couple of $1,000s. You're going to find out your server's not big enough and you got to upgrade your server. I mean, there's a lot of things that happen. So make sure you're getting feedback to those that approve the funding and they see the benefit of it. That way it's easier funding in the future.
This is something that I believe this community really needs to start to stand for. Okay. During this crisis, everybody was an essential worker except us, right? There was discounts at one of the clothing lines, LL Bean or whoever it was, and they listed everybody that was eligible. Water workers were not, for this like 20% discount. Any product that you can go out and wash your driveway with for 20 minutes because it's so cheap that we need to live needs to start to show an ROI. And I think the water department was always in the back, especially in the municipal, and hasn't gotten the credit. I believe that that ROI needs to be shown, right? A different example than AMI, but up here in Rhode Island area, you know, Providence Water just did a solar installation. It's going to generate $20 million over the next 20 years, and it cost them zero. It was a zero cost, $20 million revenue, you know, based on the land and their green footprint and whatnot. That, I believe, sold because it showed the clear ROI. And I think the AMI, the leak sensors, the meter change out. It can't be just an ask. And Jeff, go ahead, because
to reinforce that, when we were evaluating, as you kind of alluded to a minute ago, we tried to hire kind of a one-stop shopping vendor who is going to do the whole transition and then provide ongoing services under a separate contract once everything was done. And halfway through the installation, they went under. So there's a story to be told there. But when we were evaluating the various technologies and the various capabilities of the different AMI systems that were available through the bid process, we actually chose a more expensive one of the more expensive ones, because they had the capability of doing these leak sensors. This is leak sensors not for the house or the customer. That comes with it in all cases. But this is a leak sensor for your distribution system. And we could show that the additional cost of principal interest over the life of the system for that, and the operating costs for the online connection and interface on the leak sensor system, was going to completely offset our overtime cost for emergency water breaks. So dollar for dollar, we're going to be able to fix leaks before they blow up. We're going to be able to do it on straight time, avoid the overtime. We're going to be able to tell people we're going to dig up their street and not have them find out when they come home from work that they have no water. And we can do all of this essentially at no additional cost, because we're not going to have to pay the overtime once we have this information ahead of time. So that was a real easy sell. It was so easy to sell to the elected officials. We don't want to buy the cheap one. We want to buy the expensive one because we have this capability, and here's how it's going to save us money and a lot of grief for our customers.
that is very key. And I think what that ties into is being able to make the public aware of what's coming, right? And that goes from a negative thing of why my street's being torn up to this is the improvement we're making to your street. And the other thing that we've seen is in the meter change outs, depending on how old the meters are or how bad the meters were, I'm using the same amount of water and I've got a 22% increase in my bill. You did something wrong, right?
Nope.
Notifying people proactively that the meters are coming in. This is why we're doing it, because it's not measuring what you're using. And your bills are going to go up. And that's what we need to do. Quick question for, Rebecca, you've seen a lot of implementations. You're working with utilities. They want to do an AMI, or you're working with them on some other projects. What have you seen that has worked really well, doing the billing system up front that sets the expectations for what's getting done, doing the AMI system and seeing what they end up buying, and then which billing system or asset management systems plug into that, or doing it all at once and selling it as a package? What have you seen that's good, bad, and different?
So to start off, I wouldn't really, unless you have the resources and the time, I wouldn't necessarily recommend doing your billing system and AMI system at the same time, just because there's a lot of cleanup that goes along with it. What I have seen is it's a little bit more smooth when you do the billing system first. You know, you've cleaned up some of those meters being put in wrong, people being billed by, factors off maybe 10 or 100. And then once you do the AMI after, you have the opportunity to go into the homes, change out the meter, verify all that information, and kind of catch the last things. This happened, last week in one community. The meter installer found, hey, you guys bill in cubic feet, but we've been taking out these gallon registers, in a bunch of houses, and they're, you've been misbilling someone off of the wrong units for 15 years. And then the community has to decide, do we back charge the customer for our error, or do we just kind of wipe it and move on? So I think, doing it in steps really helps kind of the quality assurance, quality control process, and you're able to catch more things than if you take it all on at once. Sometimes you don't have the time to really look into it and be very careful in checking all the information.
Jeff, do you wish you had heard Rebecca's advice on billing system and AMI at the same time?
Well, actually, that was the plan. That was how it was supposed to work, and it made all the sense at the time. And actually, the AMI conversion was predated, excuse me, the billing system conversion, which predated the AMI work. It seemed very, very difficult for us, and there were a lot of issues. The first bill cycle, there were a lot of issues, and some of it went public, and it was, you know, kind of got to get your hands around it, explain it, fix it, do your best. The auditors who came in, you know, the city auditors who came in and reviewed the whole thing said that that was one of the smoothest conversions they had ever seen, which didn't feel that way to us because it wasn't perfectly smooth, but that gave us some reassurance that maybe that went pretty well. The problem was when we were halfway through the AMI conversion, the vendor went under, and we went from having a single vendor. We had to do three billing conversions in a single year. And if you guys want to, you know, maximize stress, that's the way to do it. And we survived 3 conversions in a year because the vendor went away, and now we're dealing with an AMI technology vendor that we have no direct relationship with. We're dealing with 2 additional billing platform vendors. We're dealing with a variety of, I mean, the portal vendor, the all manner of consultants, other software. We have to set up contracts on the fly halfway through the system while we're still getting bills out. We're still trying to do meter reads on 3 generations of meters. And we're doing all of this on the fly and having to set up relationships with probably about 7 or 8 different contractors and try to get them to all work together. And we're doing this. And then in the middle of all this, there's this global pandemic thing you might have heard about that we had to deal with as well. 1 year to the day, however, after this notice came out that the vendor was going under, we had a nearly fully functioning system. I mean, our AMI was working very near design spec, not quite there. We had over 90% of our meters changed out. It was working, and 40% of our customers were all on the online, better than 40% of our customers were on the online portal and enjoying the benefits and the control and the management benefits that they had from having access to all that data. And a moment ago, a mention was made of you know, the difficulty when people have an old meter and now it's 20% more, but the rates didn't change. What are you doing? Your meter's broken. What's wrong? You know, we had to deal with a lot of that because we had a lot of those situations out there. The benefit is we now have the ability, in fact, they, if they want to use it, have the ability to prove to themselves that that's how much water they used. We can prove it to them hour by hour. They can prove it to themselves day to day, hour by hour. And yes, it's a conversation, and yes, it's staff time, and it requires a special person to work from anger to understanding. We had all those people, we have the best. But the technology gave us the information that made it possible for us to satisfy in almost every case, not 100%, but almost every case, that they were being billed correctly, which we couldn't do before.
I have one question I want to field, define truncation. And so I'm going to give my take, and then the panelists can add to it. When your meter has 8 digits, but your system only reads 6, right? If depending on where you move, what digits you're reading, you're losing a lot of money. So aligning, usually this mistake happens during a meter change out. And you know, it's the process that it reads into your system, but different vendors have different things. So aligning that is the problem. And over the years, this meter was changed out. It was done right, but they didn't record it correctly. So you're losing a lot of money. When that happens on a commercial meter, a large commercial meter. We recently dealt with one at a brewery. They use a lot of water. It's a very successful brewery. And it was, oops, and there was no going back to them and saying, you owe us this much money. That was like, thank you. Drew, you were going to say something?
I was just talking about the truncating. We have the same problem here at Middletown we ran into, and that's one thing that gets missed a lot of times. Our elected officials establish the water and sewer rates, and they establish rates, but they don't talk about truncating. And truncating simply means that, do you read in thousands of gallons or do you bill people right to the gallon? Either way is fine. It all works out. But if you truncate to thousands, that means it drops off the last 3 zeros. That's what it means. What we found out very quickly is that we had some people being billed to gallons and some people being billed only in thousands. Well, that changes their bill, and it can make things, contentious sometimes. So, as we change out the meters, we are slowly changing everybody where we read to the gallon. But that's one of those things that gets missed. It's found out about by the staff people that are changing out the meters. And if they don't understand its implications, it can have a big implication on your bottom line. It's something that you do have to take into consideration. And, are you buying a billing system that gives you the option? Can you bill? Can you change it? Can you go from one to the other? One of the things we found out is when you bill to the gallons, being able to easily calculate your water bill based on the usage that you were given becomes a little bit more complicated, because everything is based in thousands of gallons on most of the water rates that you see out there. You pay $36 for the first 3,000 gallons and $5.50 for every 1,000 gallon after that. Everything's in thousands. It's easy to calculate when you send them their consumption in thousands. But when you send their consumption going down to the individual gallon, you better have a computer to calculate what the bill is, because you're not going to be able to do it in your head. It's not going to work.
You're also going to get, I'm assuming your customer service people at that point are getting quite an earful. I have a question from, if anybody of the panelists are familiar with the reports that came out in Kent County, Rhode Island. It was a meter change out, and auditors, I believe a third party was called in. Was anybody familiar with that here on the panel?
No, but I just wanted to quickly touch on something on truncation that I think should be shared. One thing that you need to remember is that with certain metering technologies, digits can be truncated at the register, at the radio, and at the billing system. So you want to be aware of what is coming into your billing system, because it could already be truncated and then you're truncating it again in your billing software. So that's just something to be aware of.
That we see that a lot.
And I just wanted to say, when you are underbilling somebody, you will never hear from them. You discover it, and it's you will never ever hear from them. If you're overbilling them with an error like this, you find out immediately. So those get taken care of right away. But you don't know what you don't know on the underbilling people using the factors.
Yeah, that's clear. The bias is always in favor of the benefit to the customer and the detriment of the utility, because if the customer is satisfied with the bill, let's just put it that way, they're less likely to complain, although we had a number who did that. The truncation is quite complicated. It's very easy to screw up. We found in our conversion that we had a restaurant that had been billed for 1/100th of their actual use for like 3 decades. That was a lot of money. There were multiple commercial businesses and lots of homes, some of which, they were like snowbirds, and they go away and fly south in the fall, and we shut the water off and stop the billing and shut it off at the street, and then they come back in the spring and we turn it on, but somebody forgot to turn it back on in the building, so they've been getting free water without any bills for 5-6 years. These are common things that are built into your database through understandable human error, and you want to squeeze all of that out. And the only way to do it is to really go through it with a fine-tooth comb, and ultimately, to really know what's going on, you get into the house, you evaluate the meter and the meter head and verify with photographs and eyeballs that it is what it is in the database. Otherwise, you're going to find these errors are built in.
Right. And in our example here at Middletown, it's a very small town. Everybody talks. It's like Mayberry. And having to explain to one customer why they are billed down to the exact gallon and their next door neighbor is billed to the thousands, I can tell you, that is not an easy conversation. You basically have to eat crow and say, well, we're not consistent in our billing. Well, you say that to a resident that's paying a bill and doesn't want to pay the bill in the first place. You don't necessarily get the happiest response back. So, the sooner you identify the issues and can start working to solve the problem and have a plan to solve the problem, the better off you'll be. One last thing I did want to throw in, I know we're getting late on time. My number one thing as far as any integrations, any upgrades or anything else is to have a very good IT department or an IT contractor. Middletown is very small. We don't have any in-house IT, but we have a great contractor. But you really, really need to have a good IT contractor because they're the ones that are going to make all these systems talk on your server. And you got to have somebody that's involved. And if they don't know what they're doing, it is only going to exacerbate the problem. Number one thing, great IT support and a great understanding from your IT people of what you're trying to do. Otherwise, you will go back and you'll be redoing things and it will cause immense frustration.
We can put explanation points on that as we go from one utility to another. And besides the IT, it's the understanding of what your expectations are, aligning the expectations of what you expect that billing department to do or the meter reading software to do is critical. Just to give a feedback, because this ties in a little bit before, the Kent County became very political. A lot of articles, third party brought in, my bills are high, and the study came out, it was new meters. The meters were accurate. So what needed to happen is a prime example of educating the community before you do this. And it really turned into a nightmare. They were, vindicated. It was fine, but it was really a problem for a while. So again, that educating the consumer, I think is key. The other thing we have a question is someone here has it happens to be a large sugar refinery that's using around 30 to 40 million gallons a year. Do you guys do tiered rates? Because I know Jeff up in Rutland, I'm assuming like Killington uses an incredible amount.
Well, Killington's not on they're on our sewer system, but not on our water system. So, but we do have a major General Electric aircraft engine plant on the system, and they are huge. And we have a tiered rate, but that's the only exception. It's like if you use more than 1 million gallons a day, or not a day, but a certain amount. Yep. And they're the only ones who qualify, and they get a break on the rates. But other than that, everybody in the city, we serve 5 communities, and there are multipliers sometimes, especially on the sewer side. There are multipliers that apply differently depending on the contracts we have with the surrounding towns. But everybody's on the same rates, both sewer and water, within our home territory. And then sometimes those rates vary significantly in some cases, depending on where you are, but that's how we do it.
We have rates in Middletown. All of our residential customers are on tiered rates. We did it to promote conservation of water. Middletown sits on a heavy metabasalt. It's very hard to find high yielding wells. So finding additional water is always very difficult and very expensive. And the elected officials made a conscious decision that we're not going to design a water system so you can water your grass. We're not doing it. And if you do want to water your grass, knock yourself out, but you're going to pay these tiered rates. Let me tell you, it knocked them out. It knocked our water use and our peaks, they're gone. It's a very stable system. The rates, we set the first tier to start at 25,000 gallons, which 95% of our customers use below. So in normal usage, no one hits the tiers. You're going to hit the tiers, you start watering grass. And that's done intentionally, and it works very, very well. So, I mean, we do use the tiered rates. They work great in our particular system. The person talking about the sugar refinery, a lot of that's going to be based on your water system. Can you provide that kind of water easily? If you can easily provide the water and make money on it, knock yourself out. If you have a limited supply and you're struggling to, keep up with your demand to different areas, then you're going to be more concerned about how much water everybody takes. So I think the question goes back to the person that asked that. If you've got an unlimited supply of water and can provide it, I don't know that a tiered rate is necessary if it's easy to provide. If it's not, then you might want to consider it.
Yeah, we're working with a group down in Georgia right now, and they have a very tiered rate, commercial and residential. In the conversations with them, it was, specifically they needed to tier a large consumer, like in this case, the sugar refinery, which obviously is employing a lot of people. Jeff, the place up in GE, you need to make sure that you're accommodating them on the job side, and I think this loops around the need for efficiencies, right? All the water losses that everybody we work with is having, the lost revenue, this is where we need to tighten it up. And we are getting to a close. There's a couple questions that I'm going to, for people that are in here, you've asked some detailed questions, and I will actually be sending you an email directly. One of the people asked about the billing systems that you guys ended up using. Most of the panelists, I know which ones they're using, but we've done a really good job, you noticed, of not promoting any brand or demoting any brand. So I'll contact you directly on that. And also after the webinar, if anybody does have any questions, you can contact me directly because you have my email, and I will gladly do an introduction if you have specific questions. And also there will be a video will be coming out. So anybody wants to see it, somebody who missed it, but we will also be breaking it up into categories. So you don't need to watch 40, 50 minutes. You can see the issue. So as we switch a little bit and we go into wrap up mode, what I want to talk about, two things, is I want to talk about legacy, which is kind of teeing it up for, I'm going to say Jeff. Jeff just retired at the end of last year. Clearly his last year didn't go smoothly, but he did it. And all the issues that he had, he didn't leave like, oh, see you guys later. Dealt with a lot of press issues and budget issues. Rebecca, I'd like to hear from you about the difficulty, the money, where you see, again, the budgets to kind of fuel these companies that are always, the utilities are a company, right, that always gets left behind. Here in New England, Eversource, I'm not supposed to mention utilities, huge increases, huge regulators fighting back and forth. None of the water utilities I'm working with have done 24% increase in 2 years. How do we get that money? So Rebecca, I'd like to push it to you on, if you were called in and utility saying, how are we going to make money? How are we going to improve things? What's your first assessment recommendations on a high level?
So outside of doing a lot of water meter implementation projects, I do a lot of work in water auditing as well. And I think the first step is really taking a look at your community's water loss. How much are you pumping into your system that you're not gaining revenue on, or that's just going straight into the ground? When you go through an AMI implementation and you're putting in the smart metering technology, you have the confidence to know, like, I've cleaned up my billing system. I have highly accurate meters in the system. I can confidently say, my losses are somewhere else, and I can direct that effort into leak detection or kind of cramping down on municipal use of hydrants. Versus if you're not very confident in the usage that's coming from your older meters, it's really hard to ask your customers to pay more. I mean, I know as a homeowner, I would be shocked if, my community was losing 30% of its water and I'm seeing a 10% rate increase, like, you're being irresponsible and losing all this water and revenue. Why do I have to make it up? So I think one of the big things is just really instilling confidence in your billing system and your meters, and instilling that confidence in your customers. And I think a lot of the newer technology with the leak alerts, the customer portals, it's, customers really appreciate a heads up. Hey, we think you have a leaky toilet. We want to let you know, go solve it, so you don't have to pay for that water that, you're not really using. It's just leaking in your home. Kind of letting your customers know, oh, wow, it's very accurate. They're looking out for me. The more confidence you can instill in your customers, the more you can expect for them to kind of contribute and fight back a little bit less.
So as somebody who actually is involved in the billing and so forth, every quarter I get probably 3 to 5 people who are shocked with a huge bill that they didn't know they had this kind of consumption or these kind of leaks and so forth. It's heartbreaking. In some cases, it's the start to somebody losing their home. So that's the human factor of it. If we could get a better ability to make the people aware, I think that's huge.
Yeah, you were talking about water loss. I'll give you a quick story that a number of years ago, when we started tracking our water loss, and when we first started calculating it, we were over 30% loss. So we went through a huge program of trying to figure out where it was coming from. You know what the number one source was? The town. None of our facilities were metered. And the logic was back then, why would we meter and bill ourselves? So we put meters on all of our facilities, our water plants, our sewer plants, town hall, the shops, you name it. Come to find out, as one entity, the town of Middletown uses more water than anybody else in the whole town. And that matters. We knock 10% off of that 30% number just by metering unmetered services. Now, we don't bill ourselves, but we are accountable for it. And I can tell you, it shocked the heck out of me. I can tell you, when I sent the report out to the elected officials and the mayor looked, he says, "Oh my God, we're the biggest water users in the town. We're wasting water." And I'm like, "No, we're not wasting water. It's just what it takes to run these plants." And, that was a whole education process as well. So, unmetered services is a great place to find water loss. Let me tell you, we didn't meter the fire company. We gave them the water free. Hey, hell, they're the fire company. Give them the water for free, of course. When we went to put the meter in, you thought it was the end of the world. It's like, look, we're not going to bill you guys. We just want to account for the water. That's all. So that's something that you can think about. If you don't do that, I think you'll be very shocked at how much water is used by your facilities in and of themselves.
If I could quickly just
Go
speak to that financing thing. Our original proposal from the vendor that went under demonstrated that we could do this without having to raise rates. It would pay for itself. It was the hardware and the setup, the original installation was based on a separate and independent 15-year lease purchase for a little over $3 million. And those costs and the ongoing costs would be offset by the savings and the new revenue and some other savings, budgetary savings for doing that. After they went under, and in that year from hell, when we had to go through all of that stuff and replace all of that stuff and knit it all back together ourselves, we ended up with just a little under $200,000 a year below what we expected to spend for the vendor. So, we actually cut rates. We were able to, people were saying, it's going to raise our rates, blah, 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 blah. We actually cut our water rates a little bit. For the current year, the year coming up, we were able to lower them because of the savings we were able to show, both in terms of the operating cost of the system based on what we had expected and the additional revenues that we're now seeing coming in.
One of the things that I think everybody kind of touched on, and Rebecca, you started it, it wasn't rip out and put in an AMI system. It was look at each component and make sure you're getting the maximum efficiency. And one of the things that we see is, again, and I've said it before, everybody that's on this call in my mind is under budgeted. Whatever tool you've been given, you need to maximize it, right? And we buy a tool, we get a software program, you're understaffed. Who's really using all the aspects, right? I used to always joke with a VCR, I was the only one in the house who couldn't program it. I knew how to turn it on. The kids would come over and they'd make it do all sorts of extra functions that added to the value. I didn't do it. What's very important of whoever your vendors are, if it's your billing vendor, your asset management, your supplier for your meeting, whatever it is, our recommendation is you get whatever you can get out of them to make your system do what you think you need it to do, and find out what it doesn't do and then budget. Is it with that vendor or is it with another vendor? Or is it bringing in an engineering firm saying, we got some problems? But quantifying all that water loss and where that billing is, to me, if you came to me and asked for $3 million, because I don't think that's good enough. And Drew, you brought it up earlier, and Jeff, you had to do it, is what's the business case behind it? It's one of the questions. What was the business case? And without a strong business case, in my mind, if you're in my town, I don't think they should give you $3 million of our money. We've got budget problems as it is, right? Show them that we can do it. And I believe that everybody that is on this call, there's efficiencies in your department, your utility, that can put money in your pocket, either through revenue increases or decrease costs. Our next series, and again, we're going to wrap up real quick. Again, anybody who has additional questions can contact us directly, but our next series will be sending out a questionnaire. We're seeing a lot of issues with asset management and work orders. And we'll be discussing that. And also the providers that are out there that tie all this stuff together, literally from your SCADA performance, your billing, your customer service, and you now have all this tremendous amount of data. And if I just dump that on you guys, it's the old term information overload. What can you do with it? So finding, there's a few companies out there that do that. That's all they do. They don't build the sensors, they bring it all together. So any one of the utilities on this call, in my mind, look at your billing, making sure you're getting what you need. Truncation across the board. Again, we see 3 to 12% errors, and I'm talking 100,000 accounts. That's a lot of money. And Jeff, you brought up some, ones of whatever. And another shared experience is whoever, if they're on the call, that is responsible for rate increases, please go back into your system and make sure they were applied. We came across one that was 3 years, no rate increases, $4 million in lost revenue. Needless to say, that person, it was not good. So whoever's in your system, just do a double check to make sure that those rate increases have been applied. I want to thank our panelists. It was a pleasure. Prior conversations and getting ready for this and sharing your information. I know there's a couple panelists on here that have some white papers that are coming out that I will share with the attendees. As those are done, I will share that information. It's, again, it will always be meant to be informative, not as a sales pitch. And anybody on this who does have a question, contact me. You will be getting a slide deck that included not just the slides that were presented, but also a bunch of the talking points that were in here that you can reuse for your own town to help you out there. And we'll be sending you some other stuff. But again, thank everybody for sharing your experiences, the good, the bad, and different. And everybody have a great day.